We are live here with Matt Beaudreau. Well, I guess we're not really live, but we're live, recording for
You and I
us.
are live.
We're live, exactly.
Live right
There
now.
we go. Guys, I'm super excited to introduce our guest today. Matt and I connected a couple months ago after I heard his podcast with Nick Bear. I was so excited about the mission he had. I wanted to get him on right away, and I reached out, and he was gracious enough to respond. I mean, almost instantly. Since then, I've actually become a part of a program that he has, and I'll let him explain that here a little bit more as we dive in. But Matt is got a super cool background, super cool mission, and so yeah, Matt, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, brother. My honor is mine, man. It's always, I don't ever take it for granted. I get the distinct honor and pleasure of usually doing 5 or 6 shows a week is
That's
what I
awesome.
try to cap it at. But when it's somebody who is a friend and a brother, it's extra special, man. So truly honor is mine.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
man.
Well, Matt, why don't you just dive into who Matt Beaudreau is?
Yeah, it's when I try to describe that, if people don't know who I am, I say I don't know, kind of like a little bit of Morpheus, a little bit of Tyler Durden, a little bit of I don't know. But I say that in a way of really I'm a career educator, and I don't like to use that term right up front because definition of words matters. And when people hear educator, they automatically think school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very quick to say that school and education are diametrically opposed, and they're often at war with one another. So, but I am an educator, meaning I'm really on a mission to help reseed a free and sovereign society through education through the whole family. I want people to be able to draw out what is a God, their God-given gifts, and do so within that family unit so we can go forward and have a society that is free and personally responsible and all the good things that come with that. So, that's who I am. And we do that in a number of different ways. We've got programs, mentorship programs for young men, for men. We're launching our women's, for families that home educate. And then we're going to be launching 100 campuses as well on the school side. And all that came through my time in education. So, and then by the way, I've also spoken to probably 500,000 people around the world from the stage too, which is actually how I made the majority of the money that I made while I was building the school. So I haven't been hurting for anything to do over the last 2 decades, but it's all on this mission to serve as many human beings as I can in this way and get people back to freedom.
Of that. And in a few minutes, I want you to dive into more of why you use the word education instead of school.
Yes,
and as we've gone into homeschooling our kids, we just started Monday, and my wife and the kids have been loving it. They've been super excited. We're trying to change that verbiage because I think verbiage, it's intentional, right?
yes.
So we'll dive into that in a minute. But before we do, let's go back a little bit and where are you from originally, and just kind of tell us, about your background.
Yeah.
Go back as far as you want, but would love to hear, how you grew up, where you grew up, and kind of what led you to this point today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. And I don't want anybody to get turned off by the fact that the first thing I'm going to share is something when I was 4 years old. It's relevant to the rest of the story. I promise I'm not going to go then when I was 5, but I do want to share something very specific
Yeah.
from that time. So 4 years, I was I'm a November birth. And so I started kindergarten when I was 4 years old. So I remember very distinctly being 4, going into class. And I remember the teacher grouping us together at one point, setting us up in different little pods. And I remember being in the red group. And I remember sitting there and looking at the way the groups had been organized. And I went, oh, okay, well, that group over there, we're about to read and do this reading thing. So that group over there needs the most help. That group over there needs a little bit less. They need a little bit less. And this red group, we're the best readers in the group. So they're actually like putting us in categories based on how well we perform this. I could see it very clearly.
Interesting.
And so at that point, I went, there's a little bit of a game going on here. And by the time I was about, 7 or 8, it was like, there's very much a game. I can play this game very well. I'll do the game so that everybody says, hey, you're a good student. I get all my A's. I do. And then I can focus on whatever I feel like I want to focus on. So I saw very early on, the pattern of school. And it's one of the very few, I don't know, superpowers, God-given gifts that I have is that pattern recognition. So That becomes much more relevant later on. I was born and raised California, Bay Area. Had a, whatever, middle class home, but I was lucky enough to grow up in a place that I had friends that I was growing up with who were, their families were multimillionaires. And I had friends who were involved in gangs very early.
Wow.
The first friend that I had that went to jail for murder was when we were in 8th grade. So
Not the friend, the first friend.
the first one that went to jail for murder, right? So
Wow.
it's not like this was my closest buddy I was hanging out with. The point was, like, I was growing up in this really diverse area, which I'm very thankful. And I was right in the middle of just kind of this middle class, whatever. And I'm very thankful for that now, because it only honed in the pattern recognition, and understanding that while I'm playing these various games, what I could see was there was a lot of similarities. The same young man that went to jail, for murder, and then this guy over here who's growing up in a household where Michael Jordan is coming over for dinner.
Wow.
Like, man, I'm seeing actually so many similarities and so many parallels. There's a similarity in humanity that's here, and I'm able to connect with both of them because I'm looking at the human side, not just the external circumstances. So that, again, pattern recognition was something I'm really, really thankful for early on. But middle class home, dad was not an easy guy to live with at all. A relatively abusive, really hard man. Very thankful for it, but hard man. And so I just played the game, man. I got my straight A's, but I was worried about sports and girls, right? Like, that's what I could focus on. Graduated high school and went, shoot, what's everybody doing? Everybody's going to college. Cool, man. I guess I'll go to college where the game looks the same. So I got all my straight A's. I got better at sports and I got better at girls. And that was the focus, right? There was no focus on being a good human and doing what I wanted to do. Because I didn't know who I was or what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
My senior year of college, I go through the background process. It was 9/11, took place in the fall of my senior year. So I decided, hey, I don't know, maybe I'll go join the Secret Service. Like, that was something that popped into my head after all of that. And I went through that background process my senior year of college, got offered the job at the White House. All I needed to do was graduate. And I was talked out of it by another Secret Service agent 2 months before I was set to move to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
So graduated with no job and went, cool, I guess I have to figure out who I am and what I'm going to do for the world. And that really started everything.
Interesting.
So that's a lot right there. But
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, because, I think going back a little bit to how you grew up, I grew up very similarly where, my grandparents stood in bread lines in the Great Depression. My grandmother was from oil money. My grandfather was standing in bread lines. He became a major in World War II and built an insurance business that, it's funny how I'm in that now today myself, but he built that. And, we were spending, weekends at the country club having dinner with my grandparents. But in the meantime, my mom is this, flower child hippie, school teacher at IPS, which is the inner city public school system here. And so I'm spending my days in IPS, and she would let me skip school almost whenever to come hang out at her school with my friends there. So I was seeing that. I was, at 12 years old, closing bars down with her sometimes in Cave Creek, Arizona. And then, on the weekends would be at the country club, Meridian Hills, with my grandparents having dinner. And I think what's so cool about that is it allows you to blend with so many people. You can sit there and have a conversation with the roughneck, but you can also go sit in the country club and have a business meeting. The funny thing is the roughnecks and the rednecks are where I feel most at home.
yeah. It's kind of,
so,
but you're right. It's to be able to interact with all of them is something that it's an important skill. It's wildly valuable. I had an interview that I had at one point, actually, for the first school that I ever taught at as a public school teacher. And the administrator said, I really get the feeling you can get along with infants, in-laws, and inmates all at the same time. And I went, that's actually a really nice compliment.
Yeah.
And I very much feel the same way. And again, I say that I'm very, very bad at so many, almost everything. There's very few things that I realized I was gifted with. And so I leaned into those, and that's one of those. So yeah.
That's incredible. Now, what were those parallels that you saw between the kids growing up, having dinner with Michael Jordan, and the kids who were, in the trailer parks or, involved in gangs? What were those parallels?
Um, it, so a lot of these guys, young men are young men are young men. They want affirmation. They want a challenge. They want to belong somewhere. They want to achieve something. They want to, quote unquote, rescue the princess. They want the girl, to go after the girl. They want the validation from other guys. All of those things cross any socioeconomic or religious lines across the board. So, and then they're hurt by the same things. They're made sad by the same things. And, they've, because of their situation, sometimes those come out in different ways. But what you end up finding is a lot of the same negative coping mechanisms come out. My friends on one side of the tracks, so to speak, it's like, hey man, we're gonna go deal drugs and we're gonna go smoke weed and we're gonna go, like that's gonna be it. And then some of these other guys, it's like, yeah man, we're gonna go deal drugs and we're gonna go get on prescription pills because we have access to better stuff, right? And we're doing coke and we're doing like, but it's the same pattern,
Right.
It's just, they have access to different things, and it's the same destructive behaviors, but it's all rooted in the same desires. And so the conversations with them weren't much different.
Do you think young men lack a direction and mission in life? And really just men in general? I guess it's not just young men.
Well, I think it is men in general now. It's men. And unfortunately, a lot of those men are raising young men, right? And so, yeah, I don't think that's the factory setting. What I mean by that is I think we are designed with that mission in our heart. I think we're designed ready to rock and roll and to take on these challenges and to seek them out and to take on responsibility. But what's happened is culturally, we've done a lot of things to degrade that. We have lowered the bar for what it means to be a good man and what it means to be a young man. We have this whole concept of a teenager, which is interesting. And people go, well, yeah, of course there's teenagers. Well, the term teenager didn't exist until 1944. Before that, it was just, okay, you're of age now. Let's take on some more responsibility, right? You're 16, let's get married. Let's go be a surveyor, live on your own for a week. Let's go lead these men into war. Like the concept wasn't there. It was, you are a young man, but you're a man, right? And we had these rites of passage that you walked into that and it's time to get to work. So continuously lowered the bar and lowered the standard for males in general. So we've done that culturally. We've part of the mission of the conveyor belt school system, of the public school system, was to delay getting young people and young men specifically into the workforce. It was to create perpetual infants by not giving them a chance to take on this responsibility when they're full of piss and vinegar as a young guy. And they want to get out there and they want to work and they want to get after it and they want to try to get some new ideas and they want to try new things. It was like, no, let's delay them. Let's dumb them down. Let's bore them to death. Let's get them trained on obedience so that by the time they enter the workforce, they're just these broken spirited ponies that are like, look, man, just show me what to do and where to go.
Cogs in the wheel.
Cogs in the wheel, right? So we've got the cogs in the wheel there. You've got the cultural, continuously dumbing down what males are supposed to be. And then you've got endless distractions now as well, right? So, things like video games and, all of that is, again, I say this and people get really mad because they're like, you're vilifying video games or parents that let their kids play games. Man, I'm not do whatever you want to do. But the reality is there are a lot of young men who are getting all of those DNA boxes of going after an adventure and checking the box of like taking on responsibility and collaboration and that side by side, we're on a mission together. They're getting that checked off in artificial means. They're getting it checked off through a video game, and then they get the female component, the let's go chase the girl. Well, that gets checked off in artificial means through pornography. And well, what do I even have to leave for? Like, I'm getting my adventure over here. I'm getting my girls over here. I never have to leave the house. I can sit here and be a fat piece of garbage. I don't have to actually be a good human. I don't have to connect with it. Like, I don't have to actually do anything to get all these things checked. And that's a really, really dangerous spot for us to be. And then, you put young men in this false environment of a school that, is telling them at 5, here, go be bored and sit here and listen to this person and do this forever. And if you don't do it, well, something's wrong with you. It's a deficiency. So you're probably lacking methamphetamine. So we better get you up on that, right? So
what do? They diagnose you with ADD medicine, ADHD medicine,
and you're on prescription stuff, so we've got it's a multifaceted, very nuanced issue. But unfortunately, we've been playing that game for so long as a culture that most people don't even stop to think about it. It's just the norm. And so when I say our mission is to bring people back to freedom and sovereignty, you will have a lot of enslaved people who go, oh, good for you guys. We're free. The best way to keep a slave is that the slave doesn't know they're a slave. So you don't know you're not free. You don't know that you're not sovereign because you've never stopped to consider that you're still tied to so many different things, beliefs, right? Negative things from your past. You're tied to things financially. You're tied to things from the government. You're tied to food, water. Like, you're not sovereign. And there's a lot of different ways that plays out negatively for humans.
Man, ain't that the truth? So going back to you get into college and or I guess get out of college, and you don't know what that mission is. It's time to figure yourself out. Let's go into that stage of life.
Yeah. Quite literally don't know what to do. So I put myself through school. I've always been a very hard worker, albeit I was an idiot and a hard worker for a long time. But putting myself through school, I graduated, but I had 3 jobs. I mean, I was managing an apartment complex in the college town that I went to. I was working at a bank, and I was working at a bar. And so, I did have things that I was doing, but it was still like, okay, I graduated. I'm supposed to be stepping into college. Wait, you graduate college, you're supposed to be stepping into a career at this point, right? This is when everything starts to work out and you're supposed to make a bunch of money. It's like, I don't have these job opportunities just knocking down my door. So I turned down something that sounded really cool. I really don't know what I'm going to do. And so there was a moment of existential crisis kind of going on. But I ended up walking through a mall with a friend of mine, and somebody, comes out and was like, hey, you ever thought about working at Abercrombie and Fitch? and I was like, what? I've heard of Abercrombie and Fitch. They're like, yeah. They're like, do you have a degree? I'm like, I just graduated. Like 2 days ago, I just graduated. They're like, do you have a job? I'm like, I have a bunch of little jobs. They're like, well, you could be a manager over here. And I'm like, let's talk, man, because that sounds like a gig than I've got now.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, man. So I ended up starting at Abercrombie and Fitch, but it's really funny because I always say everything that I get to do now started because I turned down a job at the White House for a job at Abercrombie and Fitch. Because, it's one of those things, connect the dots backwards now, right?
Yeah.
But so Abercrombie and Fitch, man, I start working for them in California, opening up stores in the Sacramento area and in the Bay Area. And a bunch of things happened that would be germane to my life being what it is now. One, I worked with hundreds of people, but I made friends with quite a few. One of them, I was like, man, this girl's really cool. And we can talk about, I had a girlfriend. I'm like, she sucks. And I can tell this girl about it. And this girl's like, hey, I'm kind of dating this guy, but he sort of sucks too. And so we became friends and actually had a really good working relationship. I'm like, okay, this is one of the only girls that when she's here, I actually want to have a conversation with her too. Right. And become friends with this girl. And we had a, good working relationship for a year. She went off to work somewhere else. And I was still working there at the time. I went to Vegas. I was competitive in mixed martial arts at that time too. And I went to Vegas with a few of my other buddies from Abercrombie, and we were there hanging out with like George St. Pierre at one of these fights, and Chuck Liddell and Mark Coleman and all these guys. And one of the guys I was with mentioned this girl we used to work with. I'm like, dude, I haven't seen that girl forever. She's really cool, man. I'm like, do you ever sell? Because I don't have her cell phone number. And the guy's like, yeah, we ever sell. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm in the middle of MGM Grand, and I send a text message to this girl. And the first text I ever sent her was, will you marry me? And she goes, absolutely. Who is this? And I'm like, You're like, yes. I'm like, what's up? It's Matt. We haven't seen each other in a while. When I get back, man, let's just hang out. I want to catch up, like, see what you're doing. Well, I wasn't with that girl anymore. She wasn't with that guy anymore. And we have not been separated since then. So we've been together now for close to 2 decades. So
what an incredible story.
it was fantastic.
That is so cool.
So I'll tell you what, Abercrombie was worth it just for that alone, right? But you know, also because I was determined while I was there to at least be the best version of myself while I was there. It was the only thing I could think to do. Was I was racking my brain of like, what am I going to really do for a career? This is fun, but this isn't it. What am I going to do? But I'll tell you what, I'm going to do the best job I can while I'm here. I end up serving some random guy someday and his kids, and I'm just doing the best job I can possibly do. And when we got done, he's like, hey man, I really like you. And I'm like, dude, I like girls. Like, he's like, no. He's like, I really like, you're doing a really good job. I love the way you show up. I like the vibe in here. You're one of the managers. Like, I dig this, man. He's like, I think you should maybe come to work for me. And I'm like, all right, well, who are you? He's like, well, you might not know who I am. My name is Mark Mastroff. I've started a company. It's called 24-Hour Fitness. So he's the founder and the owner of 24-Hour Fitness, which is a giant fitness chain.
Yeah, massive.
Right. So I end up going to be a manager at his flagship club in the Bay Area. So that was a huge step forward. Managed that club for a while, and in that same process, just doing the best job I could, somebody there was like, hey, you're really good. This is great. I think you need to come work for me at Stanford University. And that set off all of what I'm doing in what I've done in education, which has led to this. So yeah, kind of cool, man, watching how it works. And it's all a product of literally just, all right, man, I just need to step up and do the best I can do where I am right now.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people forget and fail to do in their 9 to 5.
Yes,
like if you gave it all that you got,
correct,
knowing, hey, I'm not going to be here forever, but while I'm here, let me make an impact.
Bingo.
People would have opportunity. Just like you said before we jumped on, opportunity comes to those who are who are working hard.
That's right. And it's not just in work. That is the same mentality. So I look at optimizing everything I can optimize. And it's the same. I'm going to optimize at work. I'm going to optimize in the relationship with my wife. I want to optimize with my kids, right? I want to optimize my fitness, the best of my health to the best of my ability. I want to optimize my financial situation. I want to optimize all of the relationships in my life, right? It's all of that. And like what we say in the Brotherhood, it's perfection is not possible.
Yeah.
But it should always be our standard.
It's always always the standard, always the goal, knowing that we have the grace and mercy that we'll never achieve it.
That's right. That's right. But it's never an excuse not to try to get there.
Exactly. That your story cracks me up so much about Abercrombie and Fitch, because I don't even think my wife knows this, that I was approached to come interview there. Like, I don't remember how I came across, but like somebody was like, hey, you should come interview at Abercrombie. And I was like, I don't know, but I was like, all right, because I didn't have anything better. Like, as you said, there was they approached me, I think, in high school, and I wore cowboy boots to the interview. Never got a call back. And I followed up. They're like, we're gonna go a different direction. Okay.
Yep. They're like, dude, doesn't fit the mold. Yeah.
Nope, not at all. Yeah.
But it's so funny, man.
But similar to what you're saying, like my first interview, or the podcast episode 1, where I interviewed Jesse Pimentel, he was actually the guy who brought me into sales. And I tried to purchase a gym with him about 12 years ago. And, I was giving it all that I got. I was dumb, ignorant, 23-year-old at the time. And he recruited me into that. And I didn't think I'd be in sales forever. Essentially, I guess I am. And, because when you're in business, you're always in sales, but gave it all that I got. And my career skyrocketed there. And that's what happens when you're just, whatever you're doing at the time, give it all you got. And even if you don't know what your mission is in life, keep pushing ahead and keep doing the best you can, because eventually you'll find it.
Bingo. And that's the thing. So eventually what happens is you forge it. I mean, that's it. Like there's the element of finding, but you find it through forging it.
Yeah.
That's really the way it works, right? It's that. And that's why we always say fire, aim, ready. Because you need to take that step forward first.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, one thing that I think is interesting that a lot of men do is, especially when they're young, they put chasing girls as as their mission,
Yep.
right? That becomes the mission of a young man, because we don't have the true adversity and struggles in life a lot of
Correct.
times, and that becomes the mission. What are your thoughts on that?
You're spot on. That's unfortunately, right? That becomes the mission. And in today's, so as we were growing up, or I'm older than you are, so I mean, as I was growing up, but same. Yeah, girls in sports were the mission because we didn't have anything else that we were really going after, right? So like those are the missions. And I'm not saying that sports aren't a great thing to tackle, because they are. I'm not saying guys shouldn't have relationships. There's a place for that, but neither of those should usually be the mission, right? The mission is figuring out who you are, building resilience, getting ready to go make an impact in the world, like to go figure out who you are and what's your place in where you're going. And we have the ability to really lean into a purpose like that and to shoulder that responsibility so much earlier than we've been told. And now guys aren't finding it or forging it until their 30s, 40s, 50s. And the reality is, once you get that far down the road, you likely never will. You'll likely just acquiesce to whatever is already there, And so, it is an unfortunate thing. And it's even harder for young guys now because there's more distractions. Like you can all of a sudden, now your mission can become getting followers on Instagram. Now your mission becoming, be going to the next level, in whatever video games you're excited about. Now your mission can be, getting this many subscribers on YouTube, or binge watching all of these shows. I have finished Netflix. I've watched everything, all of it. Like you have so many options that don't move the needle at all. It's a dangerous thing, man. So there's just as much a need to go after something that matters as there is to, addition by subtraction, keeping those distractions away.
We specifically don't have network television in our house due to that. And I see that as a major brainwashing tool. If you look on, what's on TV, like if we were at a family vacation with my wife's family a week or two ago, and Shark Week was on. So the kids, what I loved is the kids would rather watch Shark Week than cartoons. So happy about that. But the commercial, every other commercial was a fast food commercial, and every other commercial was a big pharma commercial. So it's like, here's the poison, and then here's the Band-Aid. Here's the poison, and here's the Band-Aid. And it's just, it's just brainwashing. And I look at, I have some people that are close to me that live that, and they focus on that. And it's like, this clearly doesn't work for you. This clearly doesn't work. You are obese. You are unhealthy. You have all these ailments. Your kids have all these ailments. Obviously this isn't working. But then when you try to offer any sort of advice, it's, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I think the proof's in the pudding. But okay, and it's unfortunate that, so much of America is so ignorant to it. And it may be just a willful ignorance, because ignorance is bliss, right? But it's very depressing to see.
Ignorance. I think there's also a pattern, right? I think there's also the patterns of, become so ignorant, but then you also just perpetuate the cycle with your own family, right? It just becomes the baseline. That becomes norm, right? Will's kids speak English because Will speaks English, right? And so, hey, by the way, they walk because you walk. They watch these things and they just start doing what you're doing. And so what you're doing is popping 47 different prescriptions every single day. And what you're doing is, we grab McDonald's, we grab McDonald's on Fridays, we grab Dunkin' Donuts on Saturdays, then that becomes the baseline for normal.
Exactly.
And that's what we're setting, we're setting that bar really, really low. And it is it's far too many people where that's the norm.
And people just want to bring other people down with them. They want, what's that saying? Misery loves company.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They all want to be
they want
and belly moaning together.
That's right. They want to be able to ache and belly moan. They want to be able to point the fingers outward and go, yeah, those people over there, they're this and that, or the must be like, I get it all, like, must be nice to live on
Yeah.
a farm, right?
The must be nice. Yeah.
Must be nice to live on a farm. Yeah, it is,
Hmm.
man. It is. Because you know what? I did live in my car for a time in college. And I did have those things, those times where I had to put all the groceries back on the shelf because I got up to the counter and I had 37 cents in the bank account. So
Hmm.
the fact that I have worked really, really hard to have a farm for my family, that we can work on. And by the way, we probably work more on the farm that's not our full-time job than anybody works on their full-time job. So yeah,
Hmm.
it is nice to have it. And it's nice that we've earned every single bit, man, and worked
Yeah.
our tails off, and that's it. Well, if I had this, I post something in our brotherhood today,
Hmm.
around this, but it was, well, yeah, if I had my own business too, I would also do this. If I had that money, I would also. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, because you'd do it now.
Hmm.
It's the
Yeah.
whole guy just posted this yesterday. If I had, as much time as you, I'd work out like that too. No, you wouldn't.
Yep.
No, you
You got to
wouldn't.
take charge of your life.
That's right. At
I
your
wanted
point
to
in
work
3 hours
out.
now.
I wanted to design my life around my workouts, design my life around my family. And so I bought a gym. And it took some time to get there. It took some but pushing forward. And then finally the opportunity arose. And it's like, okay, now's the time to take the risk. Hmm.
Bingo. I
Yeah.
didn't like the education options because I understood now what school is.
Hmm.
So I built a school for my kids. And that's
Hmm.
not because, oh, Matt must have come from money, had negative at all. Not, and
Yeah.
in fact, I worked a completely different job where I was, um, the year that I took to build the first campus, and I mean, build the community and get it up and running. I mean, bringing this whole thing to life, a little over a year actually. That I also took 200 and I don't know what it was, like 205, 206 flights that same year.
Gosh, that's
So
a lot of flights.
I wasn't ever even really home, man. And
Hmm.
so there was, people don't like to hear this, but as I was building out all of these businesses, it was a little over 7 year period
Hmm.
that I never had a day off of work
Wow.
for 7 years. Now, I'm not saying that's healthy or the right way or gotta grind or all the whatever
Hmm.
cliche BS. What I'm saying is there was a place we needed to be, there was a place we were, and I was going to do anything to get from one to the next. I was going to
Hmm.
bridge that gap no matter what.
Find a way to get there.
And that's the way we found to get there. So,
Hmm. I think
uh,
that's a good time to segue into education.
yeah,
You get to Stanford,
yeah,
and where does that take you?
yeah, man. So, really good opportunity, really good human beings there. Very much enjoyed my time there, and it was fun. My wife worked there too. That was actually her first job out of college.
Oh, cool.
So we were getting to commute together, and her parents worked there as well. So we
Really?
actually had time for, yeah, all four of us were like driving together. We'd meet in the morning. I'll drive
Oh,
sometimes.
that's funny.
So it was cool, man. It was a really good time. And I enjoyed the heck out of it, man. I got to work with some great people. I was in a division of the university where I got to work with the students. I got to work with their parents. I got to work with the faculty. I got to work with the staff. I got to work with the administration. I got to work with the donors. I literally got to see all of the components of what
Mhm.
makes a big giant university tick. But what I saw over and over again, this pattern recognition was that a lot of these students um, were they. I'm like, dude, you're all smarter than me. Cool. All of you are smarter than me, but I don't see a lot of happy people. And I don't see a lot of people that outside of academics have a whole lot going on.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily leading to, from what I'm seeing from when you graduate to what I'm hearing is going on now, like you're not necessarily doing anything with that degree. You're not excited about this. You're actually miserable. This one committed suicide. This one committed suicide. Like, what? This isn't working out to be this American dream that everybody thought. Oh, wait.
Mhm.
And also, the game of admissions is unbelievable. I thought like everybody else, well, you get your straight A's, you make sure you're on the student council, you're a Boy Scout or whatever else you can do extracurricular wise. you get your best SAT score, and if because of the meritocracy, if you've done a good job, you can get to Stanford University. Hey, doesn't work like that at all. There's very much a game that is being played. And so that was really what started kind of opening my eyes to, wait, this whole thing that we believe culturally about school, it's not real. It's a very different game that's being played over here. I can close my eyes and pretend that this is, I guess, the game everybody thinks it is, or I can figure out how I want to think about this, talk about this, speak about this, live about this, right? And so for me, it was like, okay, well, this game is not real. I don't really love that game, and maybe it means there is a game as for people getting in. I wonder if I can help these kids getting in. One of the chances I had at Stanford was to develop this corporate training curriculum, which is the first thing that really got me up in front of people and standing up in front of people. All these different groups that I was talking about, I was getting to speak directly to them and help them and engage with them and coach with them. And so I'm like, okay, maybe that's my calling then, man. Maybe I'm supposed to go in and teach and be a teacher, so I can help people to avoid this game or maybe play it better at an early age. And so that's what led me into becoming a public school teacher after that. But it was that game, man. It really, my eyes lit up there. Thankfully, I was naive enough to go, well, I'll go fix it as a public school teacher, because that naivete gave me the opportunity to see, oh, wait a second. Public school is a game too. Oh, wait a second. Being an administrator at a public school is definitely a game. And by the way, it's money, power, politics. It has nothing to do with the kids. The game doesn't have anything to do with them. So gosh, I'm going to jump ship and go to private schools. Oh, wait. Private schools are modeling themselves after the conveyor belt public schools. Same kind of game being played. And I was curious enough to ask why. Like, why do we play the game the way we do? Why does school look this way? Why is the world changing but school isn't? I was curious enough to ask that question. I was dumb enough to actually go look for the answer. And then once I found the answers, I was ballsy enough to speak out against it and to do something else about it. Because that's where the hard decision is. Because most people, once they find out, it is more the ignorance is bliss. I'd rather have my Stockholm syndrome. I'd rather just, and it's not because of what they've seen now. Okay, all right, I get school is this game and it's not a game designed for humans. And that's not the part that makes people scared the most. The part that makes them scared is they go, and if I speak out against it or go away from it, what is the string that I'm pulling? Who is gonna my mom's gonna be mad at me? The neighbors down the street are gonna think I'm a bad parent. This guy's gonna be upset with me. This guy's gonna think I'm crazy. This guy's gonna there's all these stigmas about home education. I don't want to be that person because that means my kids are weirdos. Like it's the fear, right?
Yep.
That. And so they're like, it's easier just to shut that off. And I'm just going to go with the flow and cross my fingers and hope everything goes.
Yeah.
I can't roll like that.
I can't either. I always like being weird. At first, when you're a kid, you don't. And then as you age, you're like, man, if everybody else is doing it, screw that. I want to do the opposite, Yeah. And, I mean, never like going with the flow. It's just, can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't either. And I've never looked at it as like I just want to be a contrarian for contrarian's sake. I looked at it like the more patterns I looked at, the majority was almost always wrong. So that I did it more out of like almost a fear of that, where it was like, I think it was Mark Twain who said, if you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. And I looked at it more like that, like, wait, if everybody's doing this, what am I missing? It's the cultural magician's trick of like, look over here while I do the magic over here, right?
Yep.
And that's kind of how I started to view it. And so for better or for worse, I end up going against the status quo in almost everything. But in that same regard, I end up being against the status quo in almost everything too, where I am far more free, far more sovereign, far more at peace, far more joyful, I think, than a lot of people are. And I don't think I'm cool. I think it's a product of that.
Mm-hmm. It just goes to show. So let's dive into why do you call schooling education? Or I guess I should phrase that question differently, because you view schooling and education as two completely separate things.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, education, we don't ask the question enough. What should education be for? What should it be? Like, what should that be for? The root of the word means to draw out. Educare means to draw out, right? So you're trying to draw out. There's like two definitions of education. So you're trying to draw out the inherent genius that's inside somebody, and the other one is you're trying to scaffold anything else that that particular person wants or needs when they want or need it. Right? Education is a wildly personal game. It means to continue to grow, to figure out who you are, to figure out the world around you, and how do we make those things come together as best as we possibly can. Right? There are things that when we got going, right? Your tech guy hooked up all the tech stuff because you don't know how to do it.
pretty much.
Cool. Right? Right. So he's educated in that, and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, you could study all day, every day, and grow to be 120 years old and die, and you're going to know 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of all there is to know.
Mm-hmm.
So what's important is knowing yourself, having the confidence to be able to learn what you need to learn when you need to learn it, having the bravery to unlearn something that is no longer relevant or necessary, figuring out how to collaborate with others that maybe have a skill that you don't want to take the time to learn. So it's easier to collaborate. You're able to make that decision, right? Education is all of those things to continue to grow and move towards the goals that are uniquely your own. That's what education has to be. It's the only way it works. That's the only way we continue to grow.
Yeah.
School is a religion that says, here's what all of humanity needs to do. We're going to take all of these things, this scope, and we're going to go and we're going to shrink it down into a crazy narrow field. And we're going to say everybody needs to do this exact thing at the exact same time in this exact order for a number of years. And then they're going to be ready to go have all of this individuality that we all talked about. That doesn't make a damn lick of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it is the same thing you're doing over here, right? So if I said to you, Will, I want you to make sure your kids, this is how things are going to work. I want you to make sure your kids in 18 years are ultra ready to be the best baseball players on the planet, like as good as you can possibly make them at baseball. You have 18 years to get them there. And if you do that, like everything's good. Like I'm talking millions, I'm talking comfort, I'm talking joy, I'm talking like, dude, you have 18 years to get them as good as possible at baseball. Okay, got it. And then you spent the next 18 years going, okay, we got to get really good at baseball. So here's a basketball. Here's how you dribble, right? Here's how you shoot. This is how you're going to box out. Here's what a 3-2 defense looks like. Here's what a 2-1-2 looks like. That wouldn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Your focus, and then you would come to me and be like, but there are games and there's balls involved, right? And there's teams involved.
Right.
And it's like, okay, cool, man. But that's a completely different game with a completely different skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So you wasted a whole lot of time when you could have just been playing baseball, right? To get ready for baseball. Okay, cool. So to get ready for life that requires all of these big meta skills over here, we're going to do this schooling system that has like very little crossover and doesn't look anything like how society actually works. I'm only going to talk to people with my same data manufacturer. Right, we're gonna be told to sit still, be quiet. I've got to raise my hand to ask another human being if I can go to the bathroom. I'm gonna pretend life works in subjects. I'm gonna write academic essays that I'll never write again. I'm gonna do things like calculus that are wildly unimportant to me. I'm gonna find out that I have no voice in anything, and so I'm gonna have to try to figure out a click to connect with and automatically look down on the people younger. Like none of that system transfers over. But we are so trained to grow up in this cult of this thing that we revere it. We're like, everybody needs it. I'm going to send my kids to it because everybody else sends their kids to it.
When it's honorable too in general society, right?
Right. Yep. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, and then, oh my gosh, wait a second. I just learned that the whole history of this thing is actually to just breed an obedient population to the government authority. It doesn't matter. Everybody's doing it, and this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, too far down the rabbit hole already. Can't go back.
Can't go back. Yep. So big problem. Big problem. So one is a religion, and the other one is about humanity.